Happy Friday, everybody,
Happy Friday.
and welcome to the Back Catalog Listening Party. My name is Mother Banjo, one of your hosts,
My name is Anthony Ihrig, the other host.
and today we have joining us from, I believe, Massachusetts, Meg Hutchinson. All right, and it looks like folks right on time at the Back Catalog Listening Party this week. Alan joining us. Happy Friday, Alan.
Yep.
Joe, laying low and cool and watching from South Minneapolis. Yes, I hear
Yes.
it's pretty warm in Minneapolis right
Yeah,
now.
it's hot and dry. I've been hot and dry this week, but it's been really nice actually. And Connie in Richfield. Hey, Connie.
Yes, and hello, Andy. And yeah, right now I'm normally in Minneapolis, but I am out at the family farm in the Adirondack Mountains in upstate New York, where it is very cool. It's like in the 50s. Been in the 50s all week. So, but I am excited to be here dialing remotely for this episode, and I've been looking forward to it all week. As have other folks. Wiley has a margarita in hand.
Excellent.
That's whatever you are drinking or munching on, let us know where you're tuned in from. This is designed to kick off your weekend. So whatever that means to you. And I have dug up from the box downstairs a white wine is what I have to kick off my Friday. What are you enjoying today, Tony?
I'm pretty predictable in the summer. I'm back to my Paulaner Hefeweizen, just icy cold wheat beer from Germany.
And Meg, are you enjoying a beverage on your Friday afternoon?
Well, you knew me back in my whiskey days, but I'm happy to report this is like seltzer and pure lemon juice.
Oh,
Well, that sounds like a good elixir.
Very
Sounds refreshing.
holistic. It is.
Yes.
It's my favorite summer drink.
Excellent.
nice. And it looks like it's the last day of school for Anne. Put in my
Yeah.
grades, sitting back with the big old Grolsch Premium Pilsner. Well, cheers to Anne and all the
Yeah,
teachers out there
teachers.
who are
Yeah.
finishing the year. You're doing the good work, and we appreciate you. And we appreciate Joel tuning in from Colorado as well.
Hey, Joel. I know Joel. He's
And
awesome.
We got Lynn enjoying a Pinot Grigio in Greenville, South Carolina. And we got Mark from Kansas sipping red wine. Well, this is so great that everyone is here. When we started this was the whole idea, was that, music is better with others. And so thank you for everybody out there for being here. And as Ellen said, let us know you're out there throughout the show. If you like what you're hearing, let Meg know. If you have questions for her about anything related to songwriting or recording or the album or anything else, just throw it in the comments and we'll try to get to it throughout the hour.
Exactly. And I've been lucky enough to have known and been a fan of Meg's music for many years, but it's been a while since I've seen her in person. It might have been around the time that this record that we're going to revisit today came out, I think. It came out in 2013? So 10 years? Really?
This one was 2011, I think. The Living Side, yeah.
Oh, okay. 2011.
Yeah,
So
that was our
a
last
while
one
ago.
last one that we did together. Yeah.
That's right. So I recognize this shot, but I would love it if you tell the folks who are watching on YouTube the photo that we are looking at. This is a photo that Meg shared with us before today's episode to contextualize the era. And maybe you could tell us what this is.
I'd love to. It's funny, right when you said that, my dog Georgie looked at me like she wanted all of the attention. So I don't know how she knew. But this is Osa, who was my buddy for 13 years. She was a road warrior, awesome touring dog. And Red House Records had a great tradition every Friday. You guys quit work an hour early and had happy hour.
That's right. It's pretty much a tradition that we
Not much has changed. Huh, Ellen?
Yeah, we just do it online now is pretty much the difference. But yeah, so in the office, when artists, sometimes local artists would stop by, or artists when they were touring through town, whether they were on the label or not, would just kind of come and hang out, or friends would stop by. And it was a really fun way to wind up the week and have some camaraderie. And I see next to Osa, I think it's a bottle of El Jimador tequila, I think, maybe. I'm not sure.
You
But
guys slide that.
I also see some posters. Some posters in the background for Bloops at the Barn Fest.
I see a
That's
Mother
right.
Banjo poster there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mother Banjo and Art Vandelay. There's a bunch of fun stuff there. So this album was, I believe, your second album on Red House, right?
On Red House,
Released
yeah.
on the Red House label. And you said 2011. Maybe you could give folks a little bit, for folks who are less familiar with your music, a little brief bio about where you grew up and what led you, and maybe to make music, and in particular, where this record fits into your discography.
So I grew up in a little town in the southwest corner of Massachusetts. I always say Great Barrington, but I actually grew up in South Egremont, which is even a tinier town. There was like a post office. That was it. Grew up there, and then in my 20s, early 20s, all the cool people were making music in Boston. And I had heard that Tracy Chapman launched her career singing in the subway. And I'd been obsessed with Martin Sexton's Black Sheep record. And
Good.
I asked Marty, I was like, what's the one thing you advise I do? And he was like, just go and play the subway for a few years. It's going to be the best education you could have. And it really was. It was, you learn a lot down there.
Wow.
So
you just take your guitar and play down there
go down
regularly?
Stand on the platform. I knew I wanted to make a record with Crit Harmon. And so I basically moved to Boston to make my first record with him. And I was just winging it, going down to the subway and trying to figure out what worked, like what was resonating, what I would notice, like what would make someone skip their train. And then I would say, oh, something's clicking, like something's working there. And then I'd go over to Crit's house and put out my songs in his living room. And he'd tell me, hey, he would help me pull them apart. And then I'd have to go back and put them back together a little better than they were. So I learned a lot, and this was my third record with Crit. So we had a real trust, a real rapport. We really knew how to challenge each other and communicated so well. And this is my second on Red House. So it was, again, I felt like I was really connected with the Red House family. And I think there was just this magic on this record where I had settled in, I had found my voice, I had really found that trust and that working language with my producer. And then I knew I was with Red House, and that you were taking such good care of me and supporting me and saying, we believe in whatever you want to make next. I always appreciated that you guys were there, but you weren't extra chefs in the kitchen. Like you said, you guys go do your thing and bring it to us when it's done, and we'll tell you what we think. But there was a lot of freedom. And so the living side, it just felt like it was this place that all these different elements gelled, and where I remember the process just not feeling hard. It felt like it was just, we were in the flow. We had the players that we knew well. And there was just a kind of magic that happened on this record that this one, along with the one I just put out, feel like the ones that as a whole piece of work, I feel like I'm going to cherish the longest. Like it just captures this story in itself where I just want to hear the whole record all the way through. And so it was a special one. And I keep hearing from people that they feel a resonance with this one in particular too.
Can I just back up real quick, and can you tell us a little bit about Crit and your desire to move to Boston to work with him, and what that's all about? It looked like we had a picture here. I don't know if that other one by the piano was also with him. Is that him as well?
Yeah. So I think we were at Club Passim in that candid photo someone. But he, at the time when he was first on my radar, he was working with Laurie McKenna and Martin Sexton and Mary Gaucher, Susan Werner. There was a certain sound that I feel like he was bringing. It was just, there was a clarity. There was like nothing was cluttered about how he produced. There was sonically, it was so delightful, and it was so clean, and everything felt so intentional. And there was a special thing about it that I just felt like I need to learn from this guy. There's a particular sound and way of working that I just felt like, I don't know. There have been a few times in my life where I've just had that karmic resonance. Like you just have this feeling of, I'm supposed to collaborate with this person. I'm supposed to work with them. And I feel like when that feeling's really strong, it has never been wrong for me. and here I am 20 years later still making records with him. So, that
Fantastic.
that says a lot right there.
Wonderful. Well, I am really excited to dig into this record. So I want to get to some music because that's what people come in here for. And this is the first track you selected to feature from the Loving Side. Is there anything you want to say about the song before we take a listen?
This one has such a special place in my heart. I was flying into Omaha right after a fresh snowfall and flying over these farms all blanketed in snow and so beautiful, but thinking about all these little farms that were no longer able to kind of hold their own. And then if you've ever flown into Omaha, you fly really low over the correctional facilities right before you land. And we were so low that I could see all the folks out in the courtyard, in their prison jumpsuits. And I had just come through, one of the toughest chapter of my life. And so there was a tenderness, I think, a sensitivity to suffering that I may not have had at a different point in my life. And I remember just having this feeling in my heart of what would that be like to be in prison and watching planes take off all day long over you. And so the whole song just came out of that one moment of flying into Omaha at Epley Airfield, and that feeling of, oh, my friend, is that your hand in mine? This valley feels darker each time. This just sense of deep tenderness and compassion for, I think, the suffering of the human condition, and feeling maybe years ago I might not have felt that deep connection, but in that moment I just felt like, oh, I know what it's like to feel stuck and to feel trapped and to feel like the planes are taking off without you.
Excellent. Let's give it a listen. This is Meg Hutchinson, Yea Though We Walk, here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Cold morning in the Midwest, winter earth in a wedding dress, sun creeping over those blue angels of death. So much corn and loss and God, hold a good book tight, for fear the fields will swallow you at night. Landing low over the prisons, Omaha at Epley Field. Inmates down in the courtyard, so close that I can feel so much rage and hope and grief, and this dream of getting free, fueled by the sound of airplanes as they leave. Oh, my friend, is that your hand in mine? This valley grows darker each time. Oh, my friend, the soul seems made from such a thread. No matter how it tears, it always tries to mend. Seems death is my new neighbor. He watches me in my garden, silhouette in the so terrible and handsome. If I turn away, or if I watch him carefully, will I not fall in love today? Oh, my friend, is that your hand in mine? This valley grows darker each time. Oh, my friend, the soul seems made from such a thread. No matter how it tears, it always tries to mend. Do unto others love thy brother. Yea, though we walk, though we walk.
Meg Hutchinson with Yea Though We Walk here on the back catalog listening party from her 2011 release, The Living Side, which we're revisiting with her today on the show. And folks really loving the music. I love Joe's comment. I know that Meg will fill every seat and blanket at her shows, but this album has a real close, intimate feel. I envision her singing to and with a small group of friends in a living room. And it does have that an intimacy to this whole album, which I think folks will hear as we go on with the show. And I know some of that is credited to the producer you were talking about, Crit Harmon, and I think he might be joining us.
Oh, amazing.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi, Meg.
Hi.
Hey,
Wait,
Anthony.
oh,
Hi, Alan.
my dog thinks that you're here, Crit.
Oh. Wow.
Oh.
So, Crit, do you remember, I don't know how well you remember these sessions. I know you've worked with Meg a lot over the years, but do you remember some of the conversations about the songs? Because there is that intimacy that you feel in these songs. Was that an intentional thing that you thought about?
Well, I don't remember the specific conversations for that record, but myself and the players, we all play off of whatever emotion is coming from Meg. So, and generally, it's very sensitive and emotionally rich, which with the kind of players we had on the record, it's not hard to find our true north, if I can say that, Meg. It's not really hard to find our way into those songs. And, the last thing you want to do is run over them, right? We always we've used kind of the same cast with a couple variations, and they're all what I call sympathetic players, meaning that they really try to feel how Meg is feeling and play with that kind of a feeling. So it's not so much a conversation that needs to be had, with the players. I mean, we listen to the music and then we know, or we have an idea of certainly what the emotional content is, because she broadcasts. I mean, it's not at all, it's very obvious, the feel of it. So, that's how we find. We don't really even have to talk about that. We might talk about maybe we'll try this kind of guitar, try that kind of thing, or we'll use piano, or we'll use guitar. But the emotional thing, once she puts that, once we're listening to her, everybody has a pretty good idea of what to do and what not to do, I think. And the credit goes to the players, really, to Meg's centering and the players responding in such a wonderful way.
And did you record this, live together, or was this something you kind of worked on over time?
Well, Meg and I always spend plenty of time in advance of doing any recording. Did we record this at Q Division, Meg, the original tracks? I know we did a lot in my basement.
We did it at your studio, and just because you're a producer and you would tell me this, you're breaking up a bit on your headphones.
I'm sorry.
You would always tell me if that was happening, so it's all right.
Well, I don't know, but I don't think I can do anything if I don't have any buttons to reach for.
Oh gosh.
Am I crackling, breaking up?
You're crackling.
Crackling a little bit. But Meg, maybe you can fill in some of those details for us.
So this was So this would have been the second record we made in your Medford studio. And we did most of the tracking right there. Even the drums, Jeff Berlin did the drums right there in your studio. And then we brought it over to Q Division and worked with John Lupfer, who mixed it. And it was just, and there's Richard Gates, who every single record we've made together, he's just been, the bass part has just like given all the depth and the roots to that, each project. He's just phenomenal. Like, Richard will come in and he will know the songs inside and out, and he'll do like in one take, he's a master. And he's just, his sensitivity and his just emotional intelligence in the music is just phenomenal. So yeah, that's a shot from Crit's Medford studio before he moved down to Marshfield. And we never had, Brad always worked virtually with us. Brad's a busy guy, and Crit can tell you a lot more about him, but he's phenomenal. And we'd always get to a place in the records where we'd be like, okay, what do we need? Oh, we need Brad. And Brad would just come in and do some masterful, delicate little thing that would just be what we were missing. And Brad would just know what that was. And
on keyboards.
Yeah. And then there's Jeff Berlin, who's just fantastic and had a really wonderful way. And Kevin Barry, so Kevin and Richard were a huge part of the record we just finished. And Kevin is just talk about that emotional intelligence again. He spontaneously understands the song, and his approach is, we always joke that Kevin maybe listens to it on the drive to the studio for the first time. And then his gift is that his real-time response is so accurate, so heartfelt, that we just sit back and we just let him do like 5 takes, and we let him respond without telling him, what to do. And you can hear that in his work. You can hear that he's responding real time to it, and that he's feeling the song. And I think the magic on this, I was just thinking the other night, like, I can hear Kevin breathing on the albums that he's played on, and I feel like it something about that gives the presence to the whole room. Like, I'm missing that on the Beyond That record because we didn't have that sound, and there's just something, the warmth of his playing, and then I can hear like a deep sigh, and I just like, that's Kevin taking a deep breath, and it just brings the whole energy, grounds the whole energy. But we've been that's Crit will never take credit for all of the genius that he has, but one of the many things that he does so beautifully is pick the cast of players that have that intelligence, that sensitivity, that ability to not just play to what I'm doing, but to play to one another. And the mutual respect they have for each other is so clear. And so there's just this conversation happening between them at the same time that is that magic that we talk about. Sometimes you can just feel it about a song or a record.
Well, and for those of you who are just listening to this, we just showed up some pictures of that cast, of that crew of players, and we'll have their names and those pictures available on our website at backcataloglisteningparty.com/165 if you want to get the full liner note credits there. So just in case you didn't catch all that.
Yeah, and Phil notes Meg's songs are also intimate. It's not just the production, it's the writing and the voice. And as Crit said, everything gets centered around those songs. And again, this album, it has this beautiful, lovely cover and this hopeful title, but it dives into some deep subjects, which is one of the things I think is so special, is that even though it has some hard topics, it still comes out feeling hopeful, and which is, I think, is just a real magic that is hard to accomplish with the kinds of topics we do, like we do in this next song we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So this next song you picked to feature is called Gatekeeper. Is there anything you want to say about this before we take a listen?
So this one, I read an interview in the New Yorker in 2003 about a California highway patrolman named Kevin Briggs, who had been patrolling the Golden Gate Bridge and had I think about 200 people he had prevented from jumping off the bridge. And in the interview, they said, well, Sergeant Briggs, what do you do in that moment? And often he's talking to someone when they're already on the other side of the railing and they're just holding on. And I was so struck by the interview, how just, he said, I introduce myself and say, hey, I'm Kevin, and how are you feeling? What are your plans for tomorrow? And those are questions that most of us would not ask in that scenario. Like most of us would be like, no, don't. But just that, the calm that he brings to that. And then above all, the fact that he's willing to then just listen. Sometimes he stayed up there for like 7 hours listening to someone, and they'll tell him things they've never told anyone. And then when they're ready, he'll help them climb back over. And it's always, of course, up to them in that moment to climb back over. But I was so touched by that I wrote the song for him after reading that. And then it was a long progression before the song even landed on the album. And then years later, he actually heard the song and wrote to me. And then we became friends. And so we go and we've presented together about suicide prevention. And so the whole arc of that from 2003 until today was really, really moving. But it's just the reminder to me of, you never know what small question, what small moment is going to be something that becomes a lifeline. And I always add too that sometimes it's easier to do that for strangers. Sometimes it's easier to be saved by a stranger. Sometimes it's easier to pour our hearts out to someone else. And so I always say, we can't always be gatekeepers for the people we love the most, even though we try so hard. But to be alert to the fact that there could be a stranger at any moment who just smiling, just asking them a question, just letting them go in front of you in line, like some little moment of connection can sometimes just be enough.
Excellent. This is Meg Hutchinson, Gatekeeper, here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
When the days grow too long, the hours standing still, and you wonder if you could, if you will, with your toes upon the edge, with your eyes upon the sky. Tell me just these things before you fly. How are you feeling? What are your plans for tomorrow? Will you let me make some? And after, you can do as you will. If your hand should lose the rail, if your heel should lose the cord, well, everything seemed fixable that did not before. How the sun shines on the bay, the islands over there. You can make it through today if you dare. How are you feeling? What are your plans for tomorrow? Will you let me make some?
I love the flow of the end of that song. That was Meg Hutchinson with Gatekeeper from her 2011 release, The Living Side, which we're revisiting today on the Back Catalog Listening Party with Meg Hutchinson and the album's producer, Crit Harmon, also joining us. And Joel, Joni, Joe, all saying how much they love the song. And we would love to hear from you, too. If you have any comments or questions for Meg or Crit, throw them in there. If you're new to this show, this is what we do. We listen to music and we talk about it with the people who create it. And it's such a treat to revisit these songs that have been companions to me for quite some time. And maybe you're an old fan or a new fan, but it's great to have you all here. And that song, I love all the layers. It has a flow to it. It kind of feels like the water a little bit when I listen to that song.
I like the ambiguity of the ending because it kind of ties in with the story you were telling there, and that really fit well. And speaking of layers, I mean, there were lots of things happening, but everything kind of had a place. I was noticing how sparse the percussion was on that, and I always appreciate that, almost like a heartbeat kind of percussion there. And did I hear some strings in there?
That was Eugene Friesen playing cello. I forgot about that. Wasn't
Okay,
it on
I
there?
thought I heard that.
I don't,
cello?
I
No,
don't
you
think so. Unless we left him out of the credits, I don't think so. I think that was Brad. I think that would have been Brad playing that.
Brad.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm holding it up.
I believe
I'm double checking.
But he has played on some of our records, so Eugene has been on that. That could have been Brad. But that was also Kevin playing that nylon string, what I call my little mini couch guitar, which happened to have nylon strings. And we were looking for something that fit. Sometimes it makes lyrics, the sensitivity of her lyrics, a steel string regular acoustic guitar doesn't quite fit like that nylon, soft, beautiful thing. And everything was so soft and beautiful in that song. We tried to keep it there. And that just, he put that in his hands. And it's really like a mini travel guitar that I like nylon strings, and Kevin, put anything in his hands and he makes magic with it. So.
Yeah, it's not the first time Kevin Barry's name has come up on this show.
I bet.
I feel like in recent weeks we've had, Christelle Morris and Mark Corelli both, I think, name checked Kevin Barry. Great player. We got a question from LJS saying, do you get into deep emotional places before you write, or does the thought flow towards evoking emotional content? So do you have to be in a special emotional spot to start the writing process?
So in a recent interview, I was asked, have you ever been shallow? and I laughed out loud, and I was like, no, I've always lived in the deep end of the pool. And sometimes I've been literally doggy paddling for dear life, but it doesn't take much for me to get into the deep end. I kind of live in there. And I think the Living Side record, that the title of the album comes from this line, I promise to stay on the living side. So this album was me kind of making that commitment again to myself on the other side of this deepest, lowest point of my life of committing to being on the living side. And so there's a lot of depth to harvest from that. It's definitely, it's not something I have to work hard at to get to access. And I could actually, as I was listening to these songs just now I was tearing up just because the genuine, I can still access that, the genuine feeling I have about the moments that I think something that's always been easy for me to access is that the image where the song starts for me. So with Gatekeeper, it's just this image of Kevin, on the other side of the railing, just talking to someone, and with that fog and the wind and the rain. Or in Yea, Though We Walk, that image of flying over the correctional facilities, the kernel, the heart of the emotion of the song stems from one image like that. And then that feeling stays with me even so many years later, that it feels like I can access it, with that same depth of feeling. And so I think that's, for me, usually there has to be it's usually an image. It starts with an image that sums up that feeling. And then the whole song can kind of be built around that little gem of what that feeling is. And So I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah, I've always been in the deep end, for better or for worse.
Just out of curiosity, do you hold that image in your mind when you perform these songs?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it just feels like I'm literally like I'm watching a slideshow. It's just very image rich for me, especially these earlier albums were really that way. But yeah, very much. I would find sometimes even in a show, I'd get so lost seeing the image. Sometimes I would forget what verse I was on because I was just, I was back on that plane, or I was, just feeling. Crit and I used to talk about it. I used to feel like I was a photographer where I would just go out and I'd take all these photographs, like gather all these images, and I'd have no idea where they belonged. But it was like you go into the dark room when you start feeling ready to make a record, and then you start developing the film, and then suddenly you realize, oh, that's why I snapped that photograph, But I would often like gather those images before I had any idea quite where they were going to go. I just knew like, wow, that really resonates, something about that image.
Fascinating.
Meg told me one time that she when I asked her about her songwriting process, she said she would have an image and then something in her diary, perhaps, or two images, and she would take those two things and hang her song between them on a clothesline. Is exactly what you said, like it was a clothesline.
Wow.
An image and a title, perhaps, or
yeah. It's almost like a lightning and a lightning rod. Like if you have two, it's like I had to have at least two things, and then I'd figure out what's the connection
Connecting
between them.
tissue.
Yeah, but like you can tell there's an energy between these two things, not because they're the same, but because there's like enough difference between them. And then you're trying to figure out what is that clothesline and what else is on it,
Interesting.
Well, if you are loving these songs as much as we are, and you are apparently, judging from the comments, there aren't any physical copies of this album left anymore. So if you find one, get it.
Yeah.
I have one, and apparently Meg dug up one, but you can get the high res files directly from Meg. Obviously it's available on the streaming places, but if you want the best versions of these songs, and again, the production is so beautiful thanks to Crit, that I highly recommend you get those high res files, and you can order them directly from meghutchinson.com. And you'll also find that she has a new record out as well called All the Wonder, All the Beauty, and it's the first one in about 10 years. So it's pretty exciting, and I've heard it, and it's awesome. And I do kind of feel like the songs are different on the new record, but there is, if you like the songs on the living side, I feel like you'll find a lot in this new record, because there's a similar thread of kind of beauty amidst, and hope amidst trials of various kinds.
Cheerful songs about depression has always been my real niche.
You'd fit into our bluegrass world,
specialty.
Happy, sad songs.
We always sit down. We're like, okay, all we want to feel is that by the end of this record, someone wants to live. We want to feel like they feel like they're not alone in their pain, but we want them like to roll down that window, sing at the top of their lungs, cry, but want to live, like feel like I think those have been my if I could say what are the two goals, it's like I want people to not feel alone, and I want them to have something to hold on to at the end, but Crit and I sat down to make this last record, and we were really talking about like the scope of our work together, and we both agreed that The Living Side had been our favorite record so far, and we talked about like what made that so special. And it was having that small cast and having that chemistry between the players and that warmth. And there was just something that happened that we were like, yeah, we want to do that again. We want that, like that feeling that makes you just want to listen to the whole record. And so, we called up the players we love.
Well, we're going to encourage you all to go to meghutchinson.com. And there, you'll see, I'm showing this picture here on the video version of this episode. There's a order a signed copy button on the front. And Meg said that you can specify that you would also like a copy of The Living Side, or just that one, or either way. And she said she'd even throw in some special digital treat. Meg, do you want to talk about maybe the best process for people to get their hands on this?
Yeah. So the only thing I would say is just like Ellen said, I don't have physical copy of the living side, but all they need to do is just to either in a message to PayPal or Venmo, they just say which album they want. And if they want the living side, it'll be digital. And then I'll send them a little digital gift of something else. If they want the physical copy of the new album or the digital copy, they can just specify that. And they'll also get, with the physical copy of the new record, they'll get a copy of my early live album as a little extra goodie.
Nice.
So, and there's just a suggested donation. So just, it's a sliding scale, whatever makes sense. I'm just so grateful that people are still supporting artists at all in this land of like free music. So it's been touching. It's been touching to hear directly from people. I think that's been the most moving thing recently, is just talking about it's not like people saying, oh, it's not about me. We're just talking about the songs and what the songs have done in people's lives. And that's the most rewarding thing I can think of as an artist, that someone's saying the song was useful to me. I can't think of anything I would hope more in what we're creating.
Yeah, well said. So if you want to support this music and let Meg know how much you're enjoying it, you can, again, pick up her music at meghutchinson.com. Also, there's also a tip jar as well, so you can throw in anything you like. But, if you're going to give her money anyway, you might as well get her music. This is my feeling, right? So, but you can go to the PayPal or Venmo links that we have posted. And we're going to try and get in another song or two here while we have you. And this next song is the track that actually leads off the record, Hard to Change. Is there anything you want to say about this before we take a listen?
Maybe let's dive right in and we can talk about it after.
Perfect. Let's give it a listen. This is Meg Hutchinson, Hard to Change, here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Train whistling home in the dark, Christmas lights up in the trailer park, and across the highway, good Americans shop. There is a quiet dignity, yards tiny and clean, small enough to just fall right through the American dream. Year of the $1 billion bailout, neighborhood of the graveyard shift, just a few blocks back behind the dealerships. And all these things feel so hard to change. It used to snow here, now it only rains. I can barely hear you over these machines. Turn them all off and tell me about your dreams. Driving south from New York City, past Our Lady of Liberty, toward the strange glow of the factories. When I hear the silence in my life, but I bought all these tools to save time. Well, if they save so much, then where's all mine? And all these things feel so hard to change. It used to snow here, and now it only rains. I can barely hear you over these machines. Turn them all off and tell me about your dreams. Wanna be your new lover, wanna be your old friend. Don't wanna make the same mistakes that my parents did. And all these things feel so hard to change. It used to snow here, and now it only rains. I can barely hear you
never want to talk over that lovely guitar outro. That was Meg Hutchinson with Hard to Change, one of my favorite tracks from her 2011 release, The Living Side, which we're revisiting today with Meg joining us and her producer, Crit Harmon. And Lynn wants to know, love the harmony in this song. Can you tell us who that is? Is that a second Meg Hutchinson on there?
It is.
He blends so well.
Yeah, right. It's funny because I love singing harmony with other people, but for some reason I've always just wanted to do the backup vocals on my own records. I get such a kick out of it. I love doing it. So yeah, it's just a lot of Megs.
Multiple Megs. And I've always loved that song because I feel like this came out in 2011. I don't know when you wrote it, but I mean, talk about a song that continues to be very relevant, even though you have some things that really check a very specific time period, like the $1 Million Bailout and, things, talking about machines, trying to unplug and how these things are supposed to help us save time, but yet it feels like it takes up all our time to manage them. And I don't know, when you hear this song now, do you feel like, oh yeah, I still feel this way?
I was just thinking now, Crit, you were right. You told me the $1 Billion Bailout, I should take that line out. And I was like, why? It's where it came from. But now you're completely right, Crit, because like Ellen said, this song has legs over time, except for the $1 Billion Bailout is like this specific moment that anchors it to a certain year.
I haven't heard that song in a long time, Megan. I'm just so the lyrics are so. If I could use the term Americana in a way that Meg isn't necessarily always, but I mean, that sounds like any Americana artist could cover that song because of the imagery and the way that you wrote it. Does that make any sense to anyone? I mean, it just has such a lovely pictures. You talk about slideshow, and I'm like, wow, that just sounds like it could have been written by Steve Earle or somebody, maybe not him, but Lucinda Williams or somebody, that was more country than you are. For some reason, that lyric just struck me that way. That
makes me happy because I feel like that song started when I was stuck in a blizzard in like a random Holiday Inn in Princeton, New Jersey, and I just happened to have nothing to do except for walk around the neighborhood. And across the street was like all the classic American sprawling car dealerships, malls, all that crap. And right behind the hotel was this beautiful, small little neighborhood with, basically trailers. And every yard was so like pristine and all the Christmas lights were up. And I just felt like at the heart of America, which is why I love what you're saying, Chris. Like,
it just hit me. It just hit me. I don't remember if it hit me that way initially, but it just hit me. It's like, that's so Americana. It's so American vision to me, like you're just saying. So you can only write lyrics that good, Meg, if you're telling the truth, which you always do.
Oh, yeah. And it looks like it moved Anne. She just ordered a new CD and put in a request for any possible connections with the Living Side. So definitely winning over some fans. I do want to mention that we are starting to run low on time because this hour has flown by. So we want to make sure we get to at least one more song before the end of today's show. But I do want to take this moment before we get to that song to thank all the folks that make this show possible every week, our Patreon supporters. These are the folks that have kept the show going since 3 years ago now, over 3 years ago. What? Right. On Patreon. And when music started to come back after the pandemic, live music people were like, no, we still want the back catalog. We don't want it to go away. So thank you to Penny, Anna, Linda, Bevan, Connie, Vaughn, Alan, Chris, Alex, Becky, Kaylin, Peggy, Joe, Jim Beverly, and John, Fred, Tim, Sarah, David, Jocelyn, Court, Matt, Steve, Mark, Homestead, Peckham Parlor, Severin, Lynn, Mary, Many Tracks, Nikki, Joni, David, Sarah C, CJ, and Wiley, and maybe you. If you want to support the show and support these wonderful conversations about old records that you won't hear anywhere else. And having Meg and her producer Crit join us is such a treat.
Really special. Yeah. I mean, not only do you not get liner notes, you certainly never get the producer showing up on the, maybe the DVD commentary or something.
Just keeping an eye on her. Like I always,
Well,
Keeping
sh-
me out of trouble.
we sure appreciate you being here, both of you, and honestly, like this, to all our Patreon supporters and anybody who's just tuning in. This is just such a special hour. We were talking with Meg before this. She was like, "Oh, you've been doing this a while," and every week I think we say it's because it's what keeps us going now. It's not just the music, it's the people, and it's because of all of you who are either supporting us through the Patreon or just showing up every week and asking your questions and enjoying the music together. It means so much to us, and I just want to also thank everybody for doing that, because when we enjoy it together, it's something else happens. I don't know what it is, but yeah, something magical happens for sure.
Yeah, and we use these devices and machines for lots of different things in our lives, but I have to say, this is maybe my favorite use of it, is to connect more with our friends from far away and to enjoy music together and rediscover music, or discover it for the first time, because there's so many great records and these albums, as you can tell from hearing Meg and Crit talk about it. There's so much heart and time and monetary investment and people that go into making these projects. And, it's so easy to let them lie there. And I think that's such a shame, because these are real snapshots in time in an artist's life, and the music continues to speak to us and move us. So I want to thank Meg and Crit for being here. And we have one more song we can get to. So I think we have time for that. And this one is Being Happy. Is there anything you want to say about this?
Well, I just don't want to run out of time at the end to say that in this interim, Crit has always been writing his own music as well. But I feel like he jokes that I kind of dragged him out of semi-retirement to produce this last record, but he's been actively putting out his own records in recent years. So critharmon.com, Spotify, check out. He just had a release this week. Oh, come on. You can handle this. You can handle a little praise. You've been promoting and making music possible for me for 20 years.
It's nothing like Meg. It's nothing like Meg's music.
Well, anyway, he's had stuff placed in like 100 film, television. Check it out. Awesome new work. So,
and we will put a link to that in our show notes, so you can find Crit online and everybody else that we've mentioned, again, at backcataloglisteningparty.com/165.
And so this song that we're going to end the show with is Being Happy. Is there anything you want to say about this, Meg, before we take a listen?
Let's just listen.
Okay.
All right. Well, our final track here on this Friday afternoon, this is Meg Hutchinson, Being Happy, here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
I've been known to burn too bright. I've been known to flash and then go dark. I've been known to walk the edge. I've been known to trip and fall right in. Madness sings a siren song. The sea calls me, but I don't swim on. Let the old year be behind me. Let the old year be behind me. Let the old year be behind me. What's the harm in being happy? What's the harm in being happy? be behind me. What's the harm in being happy? What's the harm in being happy? They say perfect the life or perfect the art. A choice like that will only tear you apart. There's room for both of you in my heart. In my heart.
Meg Hutchinson with Being Happy from her 2011 album, The Living Side, which we have been revisiting today on the back catalog listening party with Meg Hutchinson and her producer, Crit Harmon, joining us. What a lovely song and kind of, I don't know, mantra, manifestation, goals. I don't know. I love it. And a great way to start the weekend. Is there anything else you want to say about this lovely record?
I'm just so grateful for 20 years of working with Crit Harmon and everything I've learned, and just I feel like I continue to learn, and that just
gives
really
me too much credit all the time.
One of the many awesome things is that there hasn't been this like ego stuff when we're working together. It's just like, what is in the best interest of this song, and then we both put all the ideas out there and explore them. And I can't imagine this without all that I've learned. And he's going to tell me I'm being saccharine now, so I'm going to stop.
You know, Meg, we love each other, and I think it comes out in the music. It comes out in the end result. So
it does. And you can check out, I did a full interview with Crit Harmon, and that's coming in little bits. I'm going to be putting it up on social media, so you can hear more about that.
Awesome.
Right.
We're checking that out.
Yeah, and follow Meg Hutchinson on all the digital places. And it looks like Mark says, great show. Thank you all very much. And a good dog got to make an appearance. That's right. Meg's dog.
That's right.
Great to see.
Did. That's
And,
the dinner hour.
And thank you, Joni, for tuning in, and to all of you for joining us. This show would be fun to just chat with Meg and Crit for sure, but it's so much more rich because of your contributions and questions and sharing this music together with all of you. So thank you for being here. If you like it on YouTube. Direct more bots to Meg Hutchinson and Crit, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and find out what we have next coming up in the show. We do this every week, not with Meg and Crit every week, although I don't know, Crit's been mentioned on many episodes, so who knows, he can make another appearance. We will never know. And
Anytime.
And then Meg and Crit, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank
today.
you so much.
Thanks for inviting.
Thank you for having us. Thank you so much for making this show, and a treasure of archives too.
Well, thank you. And those archives are available at backcatalog.listeningparty.com. And we sure hope to see you again here another week. One more time, I'm just going to say, it goes a long way to support an artist by picking up one of their albums. It tells them that you want to hear more of what they're doing and that their music is impactful. So one more time, I just want to suggest that you head on over to meghutchinson.com. She has a brand new record out. You can pre-order there, and then you can also specify that you'd be interested in The Living Side as well. Highly recommended. And man, it just set off my weekend the right way, and sure appreciate it. Appreciate all of you, and we hope to see you next week here on the Back Catalog Listening Party. Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
Thank you for having